Well, so far at Manchester United, Ralf Rangnick has been slightly critical of his players, of their body language, of their effort in particular. Let's hear what he's had to say ahead of their game against Burnley.
Every coach, every ambitious coach, and there's no difference between other coaches and myself in that area, wants to take faster steps and larger steps forward. But in order to do that, you need to be able to train. And as you know, we had to close Carrington for 4 days. Before that, we had 8 or 9 field players in training. So directly after the Norwich game, and they only came back in small bits and pieces. So in the last 3 days, we were almost back to full strength with regard to the size of the squad. But we couldn't do that much in training. On the other hand, in those 2-3 training sessions, the team looked good. And therefore, it was really a bit of in today's game, a negative surprise, the way that we played with regard to game speed, game tempo, and physicality.
Look, it's not been long. They've had their training ground closed because of COVID. His strength really is as, let's call it, a director of football style role. Mm-hmm. And that's what we think is going to happen at the end of this season when they put a first-team coach in place. But what are the early signs for Manchester United under Rangnick as a coach?
It's a good question. I think it's always unfair to make too many assumptions after such a short period of time, Kelly. He's come in and changed the shape of the team. That's noticeable. Clearly, when it was Luke Shaw and Wan-Bissaka, all of a sudden, their positions are seriously under threat, you'd have thought, because of the type of formation that seems to be his stock and the way that he wants to play. It's going to suit some boys at United and not some of those that have been playing on a regular basis. I've got to be honest with you, I never expected Ralf Rangnick to walk through the door and lift this team into such a capacity where all of a sudden he's transformed them in 5 or 6 games. Because I just don't think United are good enough to do that. I don't think they're on a level with the 3 we've been talking about. So I think this is going to take time. This is going to take a change of personnel. It's going to take transfer windows in order for them to get the best out of them. I thought against Newcastle they were really poor. The way they gave the ball away in the first half. I was sitting and watching it at home. And I kept getting up and walking around the room. I was thinking, every time I see United get up, they give it away. Fred, I've never seen a player give the ball away so much in the first half as he did the other day. And yet he's played well at times this season, no denying that. They're just very inconsistent. And so he's got a consistent way of wanting to play, but it's going to take a change of personnel, I feel. I don't think you just all of a sudden move a player from here and tuck him in here and one out there and put him in here and all of a sudden things are going to click. No chance. They need better personnel than what they've got.
It's an interesting point that about Manchester United squad, because the sort of received opinion on this is that their players are better than they're playing. They do have world-beating players in that squad. They certainly have expensive players in that squad and players who've had a lot of expectation on them. Do you think they're better than they're showing right now?
Yeah, I think they've got more. I think they've got players. If you're talking about take the top 3 out of it for now, because all what's left for them is to finish in the 4th spot. Forget the Champions League for now, just in the Premier League. They've got the best squad equipped to finish in the top 4, out of the ones who are challenging Tottenham, Arsenal, West Ham, Leicester. The manager has to get the best out of that squad. Now, the last game against Newcastle, it slowly got worse. I thought their best performance under Ralf Rangnick was the first game against Palace. I thought they're poor against Norwich. De Gea saved them. They managed to take maximum points. Grasshopper game, we'll write that off because it was already done. The game against Newcastle, I saw a poor side out of possession and an even worse side in possession. And he's absolutely right. I mean, it was one of them days for Fred, but McTominay was just as guilty as well. So was Bruno Fernandes, but they have to get Bruno Fernandes on the ball because he's the one with the guile, one with the disguised pass, who can feed the likes of Greenwood and Rashford and Ronaldo. Need to find a way of playing. Now, a lot of what Ralf talks about when he talks about his coaching philosophy is out of possession. I would suggest he needs to start working on in possession with this group of players because it's all right it's easy to coach, and I've been there myself. Out of possession, it's the easiest job in the world. Now, when you try and make patterns and you have the rotations and the balancing off and the forward runs and standing and knowing where to move when you've got possession, that is a little bit more sophisticated. And I don't think I'm seeing anything of that. I think they're still capable of finishing the top 4. Of course they are. But because they've got the best players, like I said before, I think sometimes the best players win games and not necessarily the best teams. I don't think they've been the best team in the 4 games what he's been manager. So I think he's got a big eye. He wants that job. Let's get it right. I mean, in his first press conference, he said, there's been a couple of times when I've suggested to the board that I take it for another year. Ralf wants this job. I think it's absolutely right. He got the opportunity to do it for the managers who are out there, because he's earned the right. But you're absolutely right in what you say. He builds structures, he builds organisations, and he makes them better, like groups of teams, like Leipzig, Red Bull groups, and Hoffenheim and Schalke. This is the biggest club in the world. You can't wait. If you lose 2 games at Man United, it's a disaster. He's never had that at the development clubs he's been at before. He's never won. He's won the cup in Germany. They've missed out on Antonio Conte. If Antonio Conte would have gone to Manchester United, everyone would be talking now saying, what a great move that was. They got him. He was there at the right time. Antonio obviously was waiting for Man United. He was flushing them out. Yeah. They never come. Daniel Levy, credit to him, never waited around. Let's go and get him. He's brought him in. Look at the transformation we've seen at Tottenham up to now. Now, I'm not saying Tottenham are going to finish above Man United, but I think I would bet the money I have on if Antonio would have gone to Manchester United, everyone else would have been out of the top 4 race because he would have finished in the top 4 with that group.
I mean, I think there's no... I'm totally with Tim on Antonio Conte. I'm just not totally convinced with that group of players. How many United players get in Liverpool's team, get in City's team? Honestly, right? I don't think any of them. Would you swap Harry Maguire for Diaz? Would you swap Ronaldo for Mo Salah?
But would Ronaldo not get in? Are you saying Ronaldo wouldn't get in Manchester City or Liverpool's side?
You don't get him. I don't think he gets in Man City's team. No, I don't, Kelly. And all the stats and the numbers that we're seeing at the moment reflect that. He's a brilliant player. I admire him for his longevity and his brilliance over the years. I think he's a machine. He is. But I don't think he gets. I don't think there's a United player that gets into City's team. Bruno Fernandes, is he as good as De Bruyne? No. Is he as good as Grealish?
Well, I think he is in their team.
I don't, Tim.
I think Pep shines him in a different light, and along with Ronaldo, I think there's a few players in there who he would transform.
How many coaches has he had? I don't know. How many has he had at United already, Bruno? What's he? Has he had?
None.
Is he only? Well, it's a good shout. Good shout. No, but do you know what I mean? How many coaches is it going to take? How many coaches is it going to take some of these guys to all of a sudden step up a bit?
Yeah.
Step up a bit, you know, and I hear what people say about McTominay. I think he's a decent player. I think he's special. I think he's United special. I think he's decent. Someone needs to drag another gear out of him. And I'm not sure if they've got it in
Sometimes you need that in a team, as long as everyone else is brilliant around you.
Look, I think he's got a lot of qualities. There is no doubt about that. But I just look at this as a group of players, and I don't see that many of them.
Varane,
for me.
I mean, got Varane. You know, he's done it all over the world, World Cup winner, but it's
Sancho?
Easy to. I don't know.
With Sancho, would Liverpool or City not have been interested in Sancho?
No, because Pep got rid of him in the first place. I mean, he's done that for a reason. We're looking at Paul Pogba. I think, for me, I mean, we know the boy's out injured. I would always play Paul Pogba.
So would I.
I think you're missing Paul Pogba. You're missing someone with a bit of flavour in that midfield area who could drop a pass, disguise pass, bit of presence, swagger around, let Fernandes play a little bit higher up the field and let him assist the assisters or give the ball.
I'm kind of minded to think that with United, it isn't necessarily about individuals. In fact, individuals has been their problem. They are not a team. They've got lots of players within the squad who can provide you with moments, fantastic moments, but they are not a team, whereas City are, Chelsea are, and when they're on form, Liverpool are as well. Spurs look more of a team than United, and Spurs still, for me, only have 2 top players, Son and Kane. If you were to look at Spurs, however, and maybe this is the problem that Rangnick has, Conte has gone to Spurs and you can see improvement. You can see improvement in their fitness. You can see a very defined way of playing. United need discipline. As you rightly said, Andy, they need someone to go in there and get hold of them. But so far, the players at United have the power. We can see from the leaks coming out of the club now, the unhappiness with certain things that Rangnick is doing. You guys have played. No happy club has those leaks. But when clubs have players that maybe have a value that is over and above that of the manager, suddenly you have a problem. Conte goes into United, he goes in as a guy at the top of his game. Guy's won the league at Chelsea, Juventus, Inter Milan. He's hot. He's not Mourinho's past his best or Van Gaal's past his best. He's a top-level manager. I think he goes into Spurs and he'll be driven to make them finish above United because they turned him down, wrongly in my opinion, and B, because he wants to... He sees a real opportunity if he gets the funding to get back into the Champions League and really enhance his reputation. I think Rangnick, for me, he's a theory guy, but I'm not necessarily convinced. I've been quite disappointed. And you know I've been on this show really waxing lyrical about him since he took over, because you hear him talk and you get really enthused about his ideas. Are we seeing them on the pitch?
But what's quite interesting is that his success, as you've been saying, when his real success has been at building the structures, creating the structures of football clubs and structures in which he can identify the right coach for that setup. So it may be in a way that a manager doesn't necessarily need to be a great player in order to recognise a good player. He can do that with managers. But how then, if this isn't a success between now and the end of the season, and if he does then step into that further up the pyramid role and be the man who appoints a coach, how then does that work in terms of how that's received? If somebody says, "Well, you couldn't do the job,"
but
and now you want me to, I mean, I get that's that's his strength, and it would make sense to have had him doing that in the first place. But
his strength, Kelly, has been working with younger managers and making them better. Now, are they going to ask the young manager to come in? I mean, there's a lot of managers who have been under his tutorship and they've done brilliantly and they talk very highly of him. But they've all managed little clubs. I know Tuchel's gone on to PSG and now Chelsea. But Ralf Rangnick, I think he's a good coach. I think he plays with that sort of structure. You're absolutely right what you say. How can he expect anyone else to come in? If he's the one who's coaching the coaches in the first place, how can he be the one to appoint that person? We can definitely rule out someone outside of the Rangnick bubble. It has to be someone. He cannot start bringing in Pochettino and telling him how he needs to play the game. Mauricio was not going to listen to that. He's a manager of a good quality of his own right. It's a very difficult job what he's got there. I think, I'll go back to it, I think he genuinely wants this job. I think the games what he's had have been easy games, and they haven't taken maximum points. I expected them to. We've got a few games now, I think another 6 games, which are winnable on paper of Manchester United, and I thought this period would have been very good to try and implement his structure, but I'm not seeing improvement, what Darren's talking about. I'm not seeing a gradual progression. And all I'm seeing is a group of players who look just like the ones we had with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
If you look at Spurs, Dyer looks a better player. Ben Davies looks a better player. Dele Alli looks a better player. You know, you talk to Spurs fans and they're saying, goodness me, some of these players who I thought we could get rid of. Harry Kane's back on form as well. They are running harder. Their stats have gone from the worst in the Premier League to the best in the Premier League. We always in English football throw our hands up in the air when managers ban ketchup and mayonnaise and all that sort of thing. It's just like,
we're very attached to our condiments.
Yeah, we do like our daddy's HP and all that. But you know, you can see the benefits. And if you think about, for example, somebody like Lukaku, who came back to English football much leaner, much more aerodynamic, and able to score goals at the top of his game. And you kind of think to yourself, could that be the way Harry Kane goes and some of the other players? Mora looks better, for example. He's out jumping defenders to score headed goals. There is a greater desire about Spurs. You can see the difference straight away that Conte has made. I can't see that with Rangnick at the moment.
Very true. But not all the United players are bad professionals. They're not. I mean, I was listening to Gary Neville after the game the other night complaining about body language and
whinge bags was the
whinge
phrase
bags. He said
particularly he was talking about not quite on that phrase, but he was complaining about Rashford and Ronaldo not going over to applaud their travelling supporters.
All right, yeah, Ronaldo at the moment.
After that performance,
yes.
And Andy Mitten, the editor of United We Stand fanzine, was saying, do you know, if you go away and the team win 5-0 and a couple of players don't come over, you forgive them.
Yeah.
But when they play the way that they did in that game, not to come over and thank the fans for making
Which players, Kelly?
Rashford and Ronaldo.
Ronaldo's not done that all.
He runs straight down the tunnel pretty much every game, doesn't he?
Unless he scored.
Right. Well, I watched his body language, and I tell you what, he was well within his rights first half to be flapping his arms in the air, because every time those boys in the middle of the park had the ball, they gave it to a black and white shirt every time. So, and that guy is. People have got to remember, he's the one that everyone points the finger at, and obviously he's the one that gets all the credit when it comes his way for the goals that he scores. But he has been there, seen it, and done it. And those sort of players, you have to feed them, you have to provide them, and if you don't, it's like it in our day. The best players are always the fiercest and most critical out on the field, and I think I've got to be honest with you, I sympathised with him a little bit the other night from the way that the team were playing behind him. I thought they were desperate, really, really poor. And every time he made a run, they were just giving the ball away, handing it back, and it was.
I saw him at half-time, man. He sprint down the tunnel. I mean, the half-time whistle goes, he goes down the tunnel. It's almost like he can't wait to get in there to let people know what he thinks. And I hope he is going in there telling them that. I hope he's just not going in there so they get the best seat and the drink was coldest. I just want him to go in there and just say, you need to start doing this. And I want Ralf Rangnick then to tell him, OK, you've had your say, sit down, I'm going to tell you what it is. I'm not sure that's happening in that dressing room. Like I say, Ralf Rangnick has never managed the personalities we're talking about. He's never had the superstar players. He's had them, but they've all been young and they've progressed into superstars. Now, these are ready-made, like, icons, certainly with Cristiano. That's why I admire David De Gea at the moment. I think he's had a bad year last year, but he stood up. He's realised he's the one, he turns up now. Without him, there would have been a serious problem. And I think Ronaldo turns up at the big moments. Where's Bruno Fernandes at the moment? Where is Marcus Rashford? Where's Greenwood? Where's Harry Maguire? Varane coming in, all right, you give him the benefit of the doubt because he's rusty. They're not there at the moment, these personalities. The guys who are going to grab the game by the scruff of the neck. And I think that's why they need the personality of Paul Pogba back as quickly as possible, because he can take it on his shoulders. He has a lot of criticism all of the time, but I think he's got the swagger, the Man United swagger, where I think you get on the ball and you take responsibility.
Yeah, I think that this run of fixtures, and I know we've done it before, where they look to be winnable fixtures for United, but if he doesn't get the results, and more importantly, if he doesn't get the performance, the level of performance that we should be seeing from United during this run of fixtures, us in the media, we will be asking those questions, and because they're legitimate questions. And they would suggest, if the answers aren't positive, that United, you look at, well, thank you very much for putting them up just in time. But United, they could have had Conte, and they stuck to this thing. We don't want him, he's not a good fit, this, that, and the other. But the guy is a winner, and they've opted for a guy who's a theories man, rather than somebody who lifts titles with big clubs and takes them from
what they've probably done, Darren, the way the United have looked at it, because in the past they've never had sporting directors, they've never had someone who's...
Well, Sir Alex Ferguson sort of did that role, didn't he?
He did everything, and he had family working with him, and he had other people in around that he absolutely trusted, and it was, why did they need to look elsewhere? They didn't under him. But in some ways they fell well behind in that respect. So now, rather than going for a Conte, who will give you 2 years and blast everything in sight when he walks through the door, and it will certainly make you successful, but he ain't going to necessarily create or build. You know, and is Rangnick going to create a legacy? I doubt that. But what I'm saying is they brought him in to do something very different. I think they brought him in to kind of give the club some sort of platform to work from for the next generation, for the next 10 years.
But the problem with that, Andy, is that they can't almost afford that luxury.
No,
Chelsea is strong, Liverpool is strong, City is strong, and then you've got other teams that are aspiring to be strong. And there's this misconception of clubs in a heap. Well, he left Juventus to go to Italy, and then he left Chelsea because they sold Costa from under his nose, and the club didn't buy the players that he wanted. And Inter Milan, he left because they sold Lukaku and Hakimi and a couple of other players. But if you're talking about legacies, Inzaghi has taken over and they are strong. In fact, they're getting stronger in Italy. So as far as Conte is concerned, I think he kind of gets a bad rap in some respects in terms of the condition that he leaves clubs in.
I certainly didn't mean that, Darren. I didn't mean the fact. I know how good he is. It's just that no club is going to give the manager the reins anymore.
Sure.
We're out of that era. That's not happening now. I would think there are literally two guys at the moment in Klopp and Guardiola that pretty much have autonomy, if you like. I can't think anybody else that has.
Yeah.
And I think that's very, very rare to kind of expect that. And Antonio Conte, demanding manager, very, very good at what he does. But I don't think United were ever going to offer him that platform. Antonio, come and build our club for us. Come and show us the way for the next decade. Now,
do you think that's what they're giving Ralf? Because he's not even a sporting director. They've got Johnny Murta there as sporting director. They've got Darren Fletcher there who spends more time in the technical area. That's where he is at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, Ralf Rangnick brought in 3 members of staff who had jobs. You know, would you come there? Are you in a comfortable job and say, come till the end of the season? They're coming for the long haul.
Yeah.
Because they think this man's going to get the job on the long term. But he has to improve his performances and certainly results. Results is everything. It covers over the performances, but you'd expect them to improve. But with them running games, what we just saw, if they win 90% of them, I think he's got an opportunity to take this job. Whether he's a right or wrong man, for me, the jury's still out.
The one thing in his defence is that before he was appointed, everybody said if people expect overnight results, they're not going to get them because his system requires drilling. It requires months and months of training. They won't see the fruits of this for a while. So, is that basically just what that prophecy was predicting? That Manchester United have got a run of fixtures in which they can pick up the points. You saw it against Norwich, they take all 3 points, even though, as you said, it was a great performance from De Gea, and Norwich should have come back into that game. And that's Norwich, who have had a terrible season. But maybe this is just what we can expect from the way that Rangnick wants to play football.
No, absolutely, I agree with what you're saying, but the difficulty he's got is that people are looking down the road at Tottenham and saying, well, he's showed improvement. I mean, it's chalk and cheese from Nuno to Conte, and it would have been chalk and cheese from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to Conte. Some people have the personality and the demands and to create a change very quickly. Yeah. I think Ralph's going to need time, but he's always had time at the clubs he's been at because they developing structures, clubs, build them from very small clubs to better and more financially strong. He hasn't got to do that at Manchester United. You're the biggest club in the world now. Can he handle it? I mean, he left Schalke because he was stressed when he went in there as manager. There's no more stressful job than Man United. It's the best job in the world when you're winning games every week. No guarantee you do that. When you draw at Newcastle, a team who had 1 win all season, and then you lose your next one perhaps, then the pressure starts becoming on you, and then what's he going to do then?
What I haven't seen, Tim, from him, Kelly, I haven't seen Darren, I haven't seen the press that I
Yes, that's what I
saw more press off Newcastle than I did off Man United.
I haven't seen that sort of where I expected. I'm hearing so much about him. Yeah. I expected him to be swarming all over the place.
Yes.
All right, a little bit chaotic at times, but I haven't seen any of that. Now, whether that...
Maybe 20 minutes against Crystal Palace.
Exactly. Yeah. For a little spell in that game, I think we did see a tangible difference. But in most of the other games, I haven't seen that dynamic at all. And that's supposed to be very much... that's supposed to be one of the biggest criteria
and the easiest
in his
thing to coach. That's the easiest thing to coach. Yeah. Who triggers it, the other one follows in behind. I mean, it's easy. You come across, you leave them on a wide switch, allow them so you get your team, make the pitch very, very small. One goes in, the next one follows in. That's easy.
Yeah.
It's about now, when they're actually winning the ball back, I mean, they've got to be good at winning it back because they give it away so much.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that it's very similar to Conte. I know Ralf said that he wanted time to implement his methods, and that was part of the reason why Conte didn't want to take over at Spurs, because he said, I don't like taking clubs at mid-season. I need to take charge at the end of the season so I can give them a full pre-season and they're fit and they're ready to rumble. Now, Spurs have missed games because of COVID. Man United have missed games because of COVID. So both teams have had time to implement those methods. But like you say, we haven't seen that. It was a wonderful piece. I think I talked about it when Ralf was appointed, where he spoke with Dave Jones in the Coach's Voice forum, and he was saying, I like to win the ball in the final third, and within 10, 15 seconds of winning the ball, we score. And there was a high percentage of goals that were scored at Schalke where we employed that method. But again, I've not seen that intensity from United's game at all, save for those 20 minutes against Palace. So you are wondering, what is it? Are the players buying into his methods? And that's the thing that worries me from the noises coming out of the club. The fact that players appear not to be happy after such a short space of time. I remember in the early days of Nuno when I was hearing noises coming out, and it just worries me that maybe there might be one or two players who aren't quite having him.
Well,
because
I'm just saying, from what we've seen.
Because of
he's a supply teacher.
Yes, because of his position. That would be why that is, Darren. It's because he's not necessarily going to be the boss. And players, it's the world's worst environment. Footballers can sense and smell an issue, a problem, and they'll use it and twist it and turn it, and we've all done it.
Yeah.
You know, when it's the voice, when someone, in my time over the years, when assistant managers used to turn around and tell players they're not good enough, they said, well, it's a good job you're number two. It's a good job you ain't the manager, isn't it? In other words, there's so much you can tell me, but there's things you can't say, and I'm not going to take from you.
Yes.
Now, is Ralf in that scenario? Is Ralf? Are maybe some people seeing the fact that he is going to be an overlord at Old Trafford, but he's not going to be the voice going forward? And I don't know.
See, you look at this most possession lost, and there are two ways of looking at it. One of that is if Ralf Rangnick was implementing his style of football, that you could argue we can see what they're trying to do, mistakes will be made, and this might happen. But that isn't what happened in that Newcastle game. It wasn't giving away possession because they were trying something new.
Exactly. No, it was just that they were just conceding cheap possession, basic fundamentals, really, really poor errors. I watched Antonio Conte's first game at Spurs, and I was a little surprised in the first game how at White Hart Lane, I can't remember who it was against off the top of my head, but and I was a little surprised they stood off a little bit. Then I watched them against Liverpool in the Liverpool game, and now we're all going. Now we're all going. They've had, as Darren said, they'd had that 2 weeks without playing, where clearly he's been able to get hold of them and say, right, in this position we do this. When we haven't got it, we do that. Here I demand this. Not there, here. You know, and I saw that in that Liverpool game, and everybody in the stadium that day, that 60,000 in Tottenham that day felt like 100,000 because everyone got it. At last, we're seeing our team on the front foot, at home, trying to go for the...
And that's the other key thing is, you look at his coaching staff, half of them were devoted to fitness. And straight away, you see the impact. We're saying, I can't see what Ralph's doing. You can see with Spurs. He brought in specific guys. He gave them a job. They are already doing that job. He's decided what way he wants to play. Already you can see that way of playing working. He's decided how much intensity he wants. He's seen the areas where they're weakest. They're starting to deliver more goals. They're starting to pull off clean sheets. You can see a definite way of playing that Conte has that at the moment, over a comparable period of time, I've not seen.
Do you know, one just very quickly,
well.
Kelly, one thing. What would be nice as well, and what should be happening at United, so for Luke Shaw and Wan-Bissaka, two players there that had been regulars pretty much and would probably right now have been, wow, what's happened here? Now you'd like to think, I'd like to think you're going to see a big response from those sort of boys. Ain't going to get no better for either of them than Manchester United. Yeah. No chance. You'd like to think that those two boys are going to be, next time they play, you're going to see a difference in what they're doing and how they're going about their work. Because that's the biggest fundamental changes he's made since he's come in there has been the shape of the team a little bit. But those two positions, the two fullbacks that were playing have both gone out, and two different guys that want to fly forward have come in. Well, if I was Luke Shaw in particular, who nearly scored the winning goal in a European Championship final a few months ago, all of a sudden finds himself watching, you want to do something about that.
It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Manchester United over 2022. It's going to be interesting to see what happens to them tonight.
Well, Joseph, what a party.
Yeah, it was a great victory for the players, the fans and everyone.
What do you think about your performance?
I think it was good, and each game it keeps getting better.
We need this match, no, with 3 goals.
Yeah, it was really great because we fought hard for this victory, and everyone deserved to be happy.
Bueno, es el mejor partido de la temporada en lo que va de Liga, ¿no?
No sé si el mejor, pero sí el que hemos sabido jugar con el marcador a nuestro favor, que nos estaba costando mucho. Y sobre todo felices por ganar en casa, porque nos estaba costando muchísimo. Desde que hay público en el estadio solo habíamos ganado un partido de no sé cuántos. O sea que hoy el partido creo que era fundamental porque nos ponemos también a 3 puntos del Español, que es un rival directo, para alejarnos de abajo, para irnos tranquilos de vacaciones y pensar en lo que viene.
Con el partido contra el Valencia también nos ponemos por delante, pero el Chacho se quejaba, ¿no? Un poco que nos había faltado controlar el partido, hoy es lo que tú dices, ¿no? Se ha conseguido.
Bueno, sobre todo hoy no hemos tenido errores individuales que nos pagaron contra el Valencia. Creo que es un partido para sacar conclusiones positivas. Hemos vuelto a ganar en casa, tenemos que hacernos fuertes aquí de lo que queda de temporada, porque fuera de casa sí el equipo está respondiendo bien y tenemos que seguir esta línea.
Cuéntame el gol, ¿no? Porque ha sido una jugada rápida, pero cuando te ha llegado ha sido como mucha pausa, las pican. ¿Cómo ha sido?
Bueno, recibo de Hugo, controlo y normalmente Diego López suele salir a tapar. Veo muchos partidos y Diego López en los 1 para 1 suele salir a tapar, entonces yo controlo y él no ve lo que voy a hacer, entonces intento picársela un poquito y cruzársela con tranquilidad.
¿Cómo ya tocaba?
Tocaba, pero ahora mismo sentimos una alegría inmensa, ya no solo por el partido, sino estamos trabajando como el que más, estamos en el día a día muy sacrificados, con los pies en la tierra, con humildad, y al final somos una piña y hoy nos lo merecíamos y se lo merecía también la afición, que pues mira, no estamos ganando, no nos están saliendo los partidos en casa y aún así la afición cree en nosotros, nos apoya y nos transmite el cariño día a día.
Eso te iba a decir, has dicho que sois una piña equipo, pero la afición también, hemos visto ese momento tan bonito ahí en la esquina.
Sí, sabemos que le debemos mucho a esta afición, no solo de esta temporada, sino que por desgracia hemos vivido un par de temporadas muy jodidas, sobre todo a nivel mental, muy difíciles de sacar, y las hemos sacado esas temporadas gracias al apoyo de ellos. En otra situación, en otro equipo, la afición lo dejaría de lado, y aquí, cuanto peor iban las cosas, más estaban con uno y con el equipo. Y eso es de agradecer y se lo agradeceremos hoy, mañana y en un futuro.
En lo personal, vuelves después de varias semanas que parecía que sí, pero al final no, 90 minutos con asistencia.
La verdad que bueno, no estoy al 100%, pero creo que he podido ayudar al equipo. Venía de mucho tiempo parado, unos problemas que no se me daban ido. Entrenaba, tenía que volver a parar, volví a aparecer, volví a parar. Bueno, espero que ahora sea el fin de esta lesión del carajo, porque ya estoy frito, y que pueda ayudar y contribuir al equipo.
Saca 2001, 2022...
por el 2022 a tope. Tenemos que seguir con los pies en la tierra, saber quiénes somos, de dónde venimos, y con esta afición, con el equipo, con el compañerismo y el sacrificio, no quiero ser pesado, pero creo que son las claves para mirar hacia adelante en un futuro.
Gracias, Hugo.
Gracias a vosotros.
Gracias, Hugo.